In this small village on the bank of the Vam Co River, people used to say that the land has its guardian spirit and the river has its keeper. Mr. Nam Phuoc heard that saying when he was still a child. He heard it and let it pass, because he was not a man who believed in such things. He believed in land, in money, in the reputation he had built over decades from nothing but 2 empty hands. The garden behind his house covered merely half a hectare. Green-skinned pomelo, yellow longan, jackfruit heavy on the branch. Every tree generous with fruit. Every tree planted by his own hand in the early days when this land was still an abandoned lot. He used to tell his wife and children, "This garden is my flesh and bone. Without it, there would be no house. There would be nothing." Mrs. Nam would listen to him say this and say nothing back, not because she agreed, but because she knew there were things about this garden he never told all the way through. Mr. Nam Phuoc was past 60 that year, short and broad, skin darkened from years under the sun, hands large and rough as the hands of someone who had worked the land their whole life, even though it had been a long time since he worked it himself. In the village, people respected him, the kind of respect people give to someone with money and land. Not quite affection, not quite fear, but they greeted him when they passed. They came to him when they needed things, and no one dared to cross him. He had 3 children. Tuan, the eldest, had a wife and children, and lived a few houses away. Lien had married and moved to Canton, and rarely came back. Qua, the youngest, was barely past 20, and still lived at home. The only grandchild was B, Tuan's child, 5 years old, who preferred coming to his grandparents' house to staying home with his own parents. That was the family of Mr. Nam Phuoc. From the outside, it looked warm and complete. Nothing to say about it. Except for Mrs. Nam, who had lived beside him for over 30 years and knew what that warmth was built on. This land did not always belong to Mr. Nam Phuoc. It did not belong to anyone. Abandoned lot. Swordgrass growing over a person's head. Mosquitoes and leeches. Flooded to the waist in rainy season. Cracked earth in dry season. Nobody wanted it. The year Mr. Nam Phuoc was a little past 30. Barely 2 years married to Mrs. Nam, Tuan still a newborn. He came to clear this land, alone. Nobody asked him where he got the money to buy it. Nobody asked what he had been doing before. In those days, many people did not ask such questions, because they knew the answers were sometimes heavier than the silence. He cleared it alone for 3 months. Cut the grass, built the banks, dug the channels. Mrs. Nam stayed home with the infant. He came back once a week, ate a meal, slept one night, left again at dawn. Mrs. Nam did not ask what he did during those days alone out there, because he did not say. And she had learned early that there were certain things a wife should not ask her husband. The 3rd month he came home, looking different. Mrs. Nam could see it in his face the moment he walked in. Not tired, not sick. Something else, heavier than tired. He sat down at the table, looked at the bowl of rice she had set out. A long time passed before he ate. That night he lay beside her, eyes open looking up at the ceiling. Mrs. Nam asked quietly, "What is it?" He did not answer. A long silence. Then one sentence. "We're going to have land soon. Good land." Mrs. Nam did not ask more, just lay beside him, listening to the frogs calling out in the fields, and thinking that good land sometimes has its price. The garden took shape slowly. The trees grew. Fruit came. Money came in. Mr. Nam Phuoc began hiring help. Luom arrived in the 3rd year of the garden. No one knew where from. He just said from up north. Around 30 years old. A gentle face, quiet, worked without needing to be told. Mr. Nam Phuc looked him over once, asked if he knew how to tend a garden. Luom nodded. He was hired on the spot. Luom stayed in a small lean-to at the far end of the garden, near the oldest pomelo tree, the one planted in the very first year. The biggest tree in the garden, wide canopy, roots spreading far. Luom lived there, came out in the morning to work, went in at night to sleep, went nowhere, mixed with no one, just worked. But Mrs. Nam noticed something. Luom had a habit of looking, not at people, at the ground, especially near the base of the oldest pomelo tree. Every time he passed that spot, he slowed, looked down, then kept walking. Mrs. Nam saw this, but said nothing to her husband. She did not know why she stayed quiet. Perhaps because she was afraid, not of Luom, but of the answer if she asked. Then one afternoon, Luom was hoeing the earth near the base of the old pomelo tree. He brought the hoe down, stopped, crouched, pushed the soil aside with his hand, then stood up. In his hand was a bracelet, small, brass, gone dark with age. Luom stood looking at it a long time, then looked up and saw Mr. Nam Phuc standing at the far end of the garden, looking back at him. The two men looked at each other across the whole length of the garden. Neither said a word. Luom slowly set the bracelet back down on the soil, stood up, picked up his hoe and walked toward the lean-to. Did not look back. That evening, Mr. Nam Phuc finished dinner and sat very still, longer than usual. Mrs. Nam cleared the bowls, asked, "What is it?" Mr. Nam Phuc did not answer, only asked back, "What did Luom do today?" Mrs. Nam paused. "Nothing unusual that I saw." Mr. Nam Phuc nodded, said nothing more. 1 week later, Luom was gone. Did not collect that month's wages. Said nothing to anyone. Just gone. People in the village asked where he went. Mr. Nam Phuc said, "He asked to leave and went to find work elsewhere." No one asked more, because Luom had no family in the village, no one waiting for him to come back, and so people forgot. Only one person did not forget, Mrs. Nam. The morning after Luom disappeared, she went out to the garden alone, to the spot where he used to work, near the old pomelo tree. She looked at the ground. The brass bracelet was no longer there. Someone had taken it, or buried it again. She stood there a long time, wind moving through the garden, leaves rustling. She turned and went back inside, said nothing to her husband, and from that day on, she never asked about Luom again. 20 years of quiet. 20 years passed. The garden grew larger, more productive. Every year a good harvest. Mr. Nam Phuc used to say, "This land has fortune in it." Mrs. Nam would hear this and say nothing. Tuan grew up, married, had B. Lien went far away to marry. Kwa was still young. He liked to play in the garden, running between the rows of trees, climbing the base of the old pomelo tree. Mr. Nam Phuc would watch his son play, his face usually easy, only sometimes. When Kwa ran toward the old pomelo tree, something would cross his face, very fast, then gone, back to normal. No one noticed, only Mrs. Nam. There was one night. Mr. Nam Phuc woke in the middle of the night, lay still. Mrs. Nam asleep beside him. Frogs calling in the garden. Wind, leaves. He lay looking up at the ceiling, and in his mind, a face appeared. Not Luom's face, a different face, from before Luom arrived, from that 3rd month, when he stayed alone on the bare land. He closed his eyes, tried to push that face away, as he had been doing for 20 years. But tonight, it would not go, just stayed there, looking at him, saying nothing, only looking. Mr. Nam Phuc lay awake until morning. At dawn, Mrs. Nam looked at his face, asked, "Couldn't sleep?" He nodded. "The weather's turning." Mrs. Nam poured the tea, sat down beside him, looked out toward the garden. The two of them sat quietly. Then she spoke softly, not looking at him, looking toward the garden. "We've lived to this age. The children are grown. The garden is good. The house is peaceful. That's enough." Mr. Nam Phuc heard this, did not answer, just lifted his teacup, drank, looked out toward the old pomelo tree. In the village, there was old Mr. Tam, the oldest person in the village, past 80, mind still sharper than many younger people. He knew every story in this village, from one generation to the next. Nothing could be hidden from old Mr. Tam. One afternoon, Mrs. Nam went to his house to buy some guavas. Old Mr. Tam was lying in his hammock drinking tea, saw her come in, said, "Mrs. Nam, haven't seen you in a while." She smiled, said she was just visiting and wanted some guavas. He nodded, then looked at her, longer than necessary, then said, quietly, "Mrs. Nam, did you know that land of yours? I heard there was something that happened there a long time ago." Mrs. Nam stood still, guavas in her hand, asked, "What kind of something?" Old Mr. Tam shrugged. "Don't know the details. Old story. Time of the Troubles. A lot of things happened that people don't bring up anymore." Then he looked at her, his eyes old but clear. "Who remembers anymore, right?" Mrs. Nam did not answer, thanked him, turned and walked home. On the way back, her hand still holding the guavas, but she was no longer thinking about guavas. That night, Mrs. Nam went out to the garden alone, when everyone was asleep, walked slowly through the rows of trees to the old pomelo tree, stood there, looked down at the ground. Then she sat down, right on that patch of soil, took a stick of incense from her pocket, lit it, pressed it into the earth, sat quietly watching the thin thread of smoke rise. Then she spoke, softly, no one to hear, only the night and the garden. "I know there is someone here. I don't know who you are, but you have been here a long time. I am asking you, please spare my children. They don't know anything. Only I know, and you know." She paused, watched the flame of the incense. Wind moved lightly through the garden. The flame leaned sideways, but did not go out. She continued, voice slightly unsteady. "If you want something, take it from me. Don't take it from my children and grandchildren." She sat there until the incense burned all the way down, then stood up, brushed the soil from her clothes, turned and went back inside, eyes dry, because she had cried all her tears out a long time ago. The dog's name was Ven. He had kept it for 7 years. Gentle, used to people, used to the house, did not bark without reason. But about a month before, Ven began doing something strange. Every night, around 1 in the morning, he would get up, walk to the back door, sit and look out into the garden, and bark. Not the way he barked at strangers, not loud, not frantic, just a low, steady sound, like he was talking to someone. Bark for a while, then stop. Sit looking for a moment longer, then come back inside and lie down. Mr. Nam Phuc heard the dog and woke up, got up to check. Nothing. Garden dark, quiet. Only the sound of crickets and wind through the banana leaves. He looked toward the old pomelo tree. Dark, nothing visible. He went back inside, but could not sleep again. The third night, Mr. Nam Phuc did not get up to check, just lay still, listening to the dog bark, steady, and in his mind, that face appeared again, the way it did every time he lay alone in the dark. The face he had never been able to forget, no matter how hard he tried, for 20 years. Qua was the first to notice. Early one morning, going out to pick pomelo, he came back and told his father, "Ba, the earth under the old pomelo tree has been turned up." Mr. Nam Phuc went out to look. It was true. A patch the size of a sleeping mat, right at the base of the oldest pomelo tree. Earth clearly disturbed, as though someone had dug and filled it back. Mr. Nam Phuc stood looking at that patch of ground, longer than necessary, then said, "Rain must have done it." Qua looked up at the clear sky, said nothing. The following week, the earth turned over again. Mr. Nam Phuc went out alone to look. This time he stood there a very long time, his hand resting against the trunk of the pomelo tree. The trunk as wide as a person's arms could reach, bark rough and thick. He stood there, hand on the tree, like a man asking forgiveness of someone, or asking someone to keep him safe. No one could tell which, because no one saw, except Mrs. Nam, standing at the back door looking out. She saw his back, then turned and went quietly back to the kitchen. Mrs. Nam woke early, went to the kitchen to boil water, passed the back door and looked out into the garden, and stopped. Under the old pomelo tree, there were flowers, small, white, arranged in a neat circle on the patch of soil that kept turning over. She stood looking at them for a long time, then went out, crouched down to look more closely. The flowers were still fresh, still beaded with dew, as though just picked. But there were no flowers like this anywhere in the garden. She looked around, could not explain where they had come from. She told no one, just quietly removed them. But the next morning, the flowers were back, a neat circle on that same patch of ground. She removed them. They came back the following morning, on and on like this, for more than 2 weeks. She never told her husband, and her husband never asked, as though he knew and did not want to hear it. Bai liked coming to his grandparents' house on afternoons. Mr. Nam Phuc loved him most of everyone in the household. He often took him out into the garden, pointing to each tree, telling him the name, when it was planted. Bai listened carefully. One afternoon, Bai was playing in the garden. Mr. Nam Phuc was in his hammock reading the newspaper. Bai came running over, climbed up beside his grandfather, then asked, "Grandfather, who is that man over there?" Mr. Nam Phuc looked in the direction of Bai's pointing finger, the base of the old pomelo tree. "No one," he asked. "Which man?" Bai answered naturally, as though talking about something perfectly ordinary. "He sits under that tree and plays with me. He's very kind. He tells me stories. But his hands are cold. Every time he pats my head, I feel cold."
Mr. Nam Phuc sat up slowly, lowered himself to Bai's eye level, asked each word carefully. "What does he look like?" Bai thought for a moment. Thin, old clothes. He usually sits very still, looking down into the ground. Mr. Nam Phuc stood up, told Bai to go inside. His voice was steady. It did not shake. But Bai never forgot his grandfather's eyes in that moment, looking toward the old pomelo tree. Not the eyes of a man looking at a tree, the eyes of a man looking at something only he could see.
From the day B asked about the man under the tree, Mr. Nam Phuc began losing sleep more often. Lie down, and that face would come. Not a frightening face, not twisted, not bloody. Just an ordinary face of an ordinary man, past 40, a small scar on his chin. He remembered that scar clearly, because it was the last thing he saw, before he saw nothing more. It happened in the first year of clearing the land, the 3rd month. An afternoon in April, sun still harsh. He was working alone when the man appeared, coming from the direction of the river. Said he wanted to rest, wanted water. He gave him water. The two sat and talked. He no longer remembered the man's name, but he remembered the face, the scar on the chin, the gentle eyes. He remembered the man talked about his wife and children, about family waiting back home. Then the conversation shifted. The man asked about the land, then asked about the thing he was keeping, something the people before him had asked him to hold, before they left and did not return. Gold, not much, but enough to make an ordinary man's hands unsteady with wanting. Mr. Nam Phuc did not want to remember what happened next, but every sleepless night, the memory came back on its own without asking permission. He lay there, eyes closed, and saw it all again. That April afternoon, sun still harsh. The empty lot with no one around. 2 men, then 1. He was not a bad man. He was only afraid and greedy. Those 2 things. Enough for an ordinary person to do something unforgivable. On those sleepless nights, he would look toward the window, the direction of the garden behind the house. Darkness, quiet, only the sound of crickets, and sometimes the dog Ven barking softly, steady, the way it did every night. That night it rained, everyone inside. Mr. Nam Phuc didn't eat dinner, said he wasn't hungry. Sat in his chair looking out the back door, looking into the garden. Rain beating hard on the banana leaves. The darkness behind the garden thickened. Mrs. Nam brought tea and set it beside him, sat down in the chair across from him. The 2 of them sat quietly, listening to the rain. After a long silence, Mr. Nam Phuc spoke, not looking at his wife, still looking out at the garden. "You know, back then, that April when I was clearing the land, someone came by and asked for water." Mrs. Nam said nothing, just held her teacup, looked down. He continued, voice steady, like a man recounting something that happened to someone else. "That man knew about the thing I was keeping. I was afraid he would take it." Mrs. Nam still said nothing. Outside, thunder cracked. A flash of lightning lit up the back garden through the window, under the old pomelo tree. In that single second of light, Mr. Nam Phuc saw someone standing there, thin, old clothes, standing still, looking toward the house. Just 1 second, then darkness again. He sat without moving, hands resting on his knees, not shaking, but he did not speak again. Mrs. Nam looked at her husband.
After a long moment, she spoke, softly. "Husband, when people die, they only want to be remembered. That is all." Mr. Nam Phuc did not answer, just looked out at the garden. Rain still falling. The old pomelo tree standing in the dark. The figure no longer visible beneath it. Or perhaps still there, but swallowed back into the darkness.
Tuan had a memory from when he was still young, around 8 or 9 years old. One night he woke from sleep because of noise in the garden, looked out the window, saw his father walking toward the old pomelo tree in the middle of the night, carrying a hoe. Tuan watched his father stand in front of the pomelo tree, then rolled over and went back to sleep. Because he was young then, he thought his father was working. In the morning he asked, "Ba, what were you doing in the garden last night?" Mr. Nam Phuc paused, looked at his son, then said, "Checking on the trees, worried the rain might knock them over." Tuan nodded, believed him, but always remembered, because that night there had been no rain, and his father hadn't checked any trees. He just stood in front of the old pomelo tree for a very long time, then came back inside. Tuan kept that memory for over 20 years, told no one, because he didn't know what it meant. Not until the afternoon the dog Ven clawed furiously at the earth beneath the pomelo tree. That afternoon, Tuan was planning to expand the garden, wanted to plant a new row of pomelo trees. He chose the patch of ground near the old pomelo tree. Mr. Nam Phuc heard him say this, said only one thing: dig somewhere else. Tuan asked why. Mr. Nam Phuc said, "That old tree has too many roots. Dig close to it and you'll cut them. Kill the tree." Tuan nodded, moved to a different patch. But that afternoon, while Mr. Nam Phuc was inside resting, the dog Ven was lying in the shade of the old pomelo tree. Suddenly stood up, nose to the ground, started digging. Not ordinary digging, frantic, both front paws going hard, whimpering. Qua was out in the garden and heard it, ran over, saw the dog clawing at the earth, called to it. It wouldn't come, kept digging. Qua crouched down to look. The dog had just pulled something up from the soil, lying on the surface. A piece of cloth, rotted, color impossible to identify, stiffened from years underground. Qua picked it up, looked at it, didn't know what it was, then looked down into the small hole the dog had made, barely a hand's depth. Something else below. He took the hoe, dug gently, a few strokes, then stopped. Mrs. Nam was in the kitchen, heard Qua call out, his voice wrong. "Ma, come out here." She went out, saw Qua standing by the hole, looking down, face white. She looked down with him and stood completely still. Mr. Nam Phuc was in his hammock inside, heard Mrs. Nam calling his name, her voice wrong, not the voice of someone calling a husband normally. He lay still, eyes closed, like a man asleep, but he was not asleep. He knew. From the day Qua asked about Luom, he had known this day would come, only not when. Tuan came running over from his house, heard his mother call out. He stood at the edge of the hole, looked down, looked at his mother's face, looked at his brother's face. No one said anything. Mr. Nam Phuc sat up, walked out to the back porch, looked into the garden. 3 people standing near the base of the old pomelo tree.
None of them turned to look at him, just stood there, looking down. He stood on the porch, looking at the backs of the three people closest to him in the world, and understood. That thing he had pressed into the earth more than 20 years ago, the earth had given it back.
People said Mr. Nam Phuoc died of heart failure. Sudden. 3 weeks after the day Tuan found what was under the old pomelo tree. He lay down and did not wake up. No pain, no sound. Just that one morning Mrs. Nam came to call him for breakfast, and he was no longer there. His funeral was quiet. Not many people came, just the village, a few acquaintances. Mrs. Nam stood at the grave, did not cry, not because she felt no grief, but because she had been preparing for this day for a very long time. Since that night, she sat in front of the old pomelo tree, lit the incense, and asked the one beneath the ground to take her instead. After the funeral, Tuan cut down the old pomelo tree, said nothing to anyone about why, just cut it down, and filled the hole back in with new soil, with lime. Then planted a cluster of flowers there, white, small, the same kind Mrs. Nam had found in a neat circle every morning for more than 2 weeks. That night, for the first time in over a month, the dog Ven did not get up and bark, slept quietly until morning. The garden behind the house is still there. Green-skinned pomelo, yellow longan, jackfruit heavy on the branch. Only the oldest pomelo tree is gone now. In its place, a cluster of white flowers that bloom every morning, though no one tends them, though no one waters them. They keep blooming. B stopped coming to his grandparents' house as often. No one asked why. Only once he said something to his mother, quietly, like he was telling her something ordinary. "That man doesn't sit under that tree anymore, Ma." His mother asked, "Which man?" B looked out the window, toward the garden behind the house. "The one who used to pat my head. His hands were cold. That one." His mother said nothing, did not dare ask more. B continued, still looking out the window, voice completely calm. "But last night, there was a different man standing on the back porch, looking in at the house." His mother's voice shook. "What did he look like?" B turned to look at her, like a small adult. He looked like grandfather, but his hands were cold too. That night, Mrs. Nam lit a stick of incense, went and stood in front of the cluster of white flowers, where the old pomelo tree used to be, watched the small flame tremble in the night wind, then spoke, softly, just enough to be heard. "He's come back now, but please, don't frighten the children." Wind moved through the garden. The incense flame leaned sideways, but did not go out. Mrs. Nam stood there until the incense burned all the way down, then turned and went back inside, closed the door. The garden behind the house, quiet. Only the cluster of small white flowers standing still in the darkness, blooming, though no one was watching.